Okay, we are recording again. Now, there was a little bit of a technical difficulty. We talked about a bunch of crazy stuff there. And let's just jump right into this identity workbook because, hey, man, we were on a roll with it. And, this morning we actually broke down a part of the identity workbook that had to do with the first exercise. But there's a couple things here. I've taught this so many times and taught based off of our identity so many times that it's so easy for me to improv and all that sort of stuff, and that cuts out a little bit of structure to what we're doing. And plus, I'm the type of guy that does not even think in terms of structure. It just uh, it's not how I create things. I guess I can understand it once I work within it, but how I create things is not that way, which is really nuts. Um, it can be really frustrating for myself. But the main point of working with our identity is that we're working with ourselves. Okay. Now, this is super important to understand and why we start out doing this. So, of course, if you have not done the identity workbook, you need to do it. It's just ridiculous if you haven't. It will make things so much easier and better and benefit you in so many different ways. But why we teach in it is because the result of a social life, the result of friendships, the result of empathy, the result of sex, the result of all of your relationships on all of its level really gain their worth and meaning from connecting you. When you're connecting something that only works and you're connecting something that only is doing to achieve a certain specific result, oftentimes we've proven that we negate ourselves, especially in this crazy, wild society and culture and all those sorts of things. So, what we're doing here is we're examining ourselves so we can learn to communicate it. And then there's this whole second back end, and we kind of got into this uh, in the previous call of the social dynamic that we put into it. And so this is like a social dynamic would be like an opener, a neg, a tease, a bait, a rapport cycle, storytelling, a point of escalation, and so on. And really, your identity and how we're looking at it here is only going to have relevance into that rapport cycling storytelling area. And then it gets into a different form of expression. It's still your identity, but it's actually going to start to change. All right. So the identity workbook is always good, but its most useful tool is for that first phase or that first pretty big phase. I guess it's multiple phases. Who knows? But the meeting people, the connecting with them, the building rapport, and so on. Once we start to have relationships, we start to make friends and so on, our identity will hit a different dimension. It will hit a different level. It will just be more. So I will actually be influenced by that person and they will influence me. I will influence them. So right here, we have this list of these things which make up our identity. And these are just loose things. There's really so much more. And there's even so much more depth to each of these. But we go with our self perception, our social perception, our idea of attraction, our wants, our desires, our career, our purpose, our family, our sex life, and our ambition. And each of these, we just kind of dive in with different types of exercises to scratch the surface of who we are. Now, the beauty of all of these things is every single human being alive in our culture can talk about these things. Okay. So we look at self perception, how we view ourselves. Everybody has a view of themselves. Everybody's going to actually have the same issues that we have, in general. They may not have the specific, very targeted issue of like, um, I'm insecure about my hair or something like that. But they will have an idea of self perception that they like and dislike about their self image and how other people respond to it. Okay. So every single person has a concept of this. And with all the different issues you have on it, positive and negative, people are going to have a point of reference with it already. You don't have to manufacture it, you don't have to make it up. just need to communicate it and elicit what they have. Okay. Now, social perception, same thing. What they think other people think of them. Okay. So everybody's going to have the same general issues as you with that. All right. And you may not think that, but it's actually very true. Attraction, we actually divide up into two categories of what are we attracted to? And as guys, we start with the physical, like we're attracted to fucking hot chicks, right? And that's kind of it. We're attracted to hot chicks. But it goes beyond that. Now, every man I know is not just attracted to hot chicks, he's attracted to how they hold themselves, how they use that hotness, their attitude, their emotions. So we actually look at the mental, the physical, and the emotional things that we're attracted to uh, with what we're attracted to. Okay, now also we take a look at what's attractive about us. Now, this is super cool because nobody really thinks about this that much. And of course, we could tactically go like, "Hey, this is attractive about me. I'm going to make that more prominent," or this is attractive about me. I'm going to be somebody that is more. Um, I want people to notice that more, so it makes me feel good, and so on. All right. What's also super awesome is that when we're like, "This is attractive about me," we can go, "Wait a minute. Probably women think the same thing." And they totally do. They think about what's attractive about them, why people notice it, why people don't, so on, yada, yada, yada. Hence, one of the great qualifiers is what's attractive about you that most people don't notice. All right, wants and desires. What we want, what we desire, what we wish for, our urges of wants, our just kind of carefree desires, all escape in between. Everybody has that and it shapes them so much. I mean, we're thinking about that every day, especially in a consumer based society. The wants and desires are a big, big thing. Okay. So everybody can relate with that. And also, it's a huge, huge window towards sex. There's like, it's actually so sad. The whole world wants to have good sex, but nobody wants to talk about it. God, what a great window of wants and desires. So we examine that. Your career, a long time ago, in the original version of the identity workbook, we had career in there, but then it was like, all right, this is the career part, and just empower it. Don't worry about it. It's meaningless. And the reason why we wrote that was because so much of pickup was like so dependent upon career. And in our old workshops, it was like you're an engineer. Women don't like that. You play guitar in the hobbies. You're a musician. It was just like, God, what a horrible way to look at things. But the main thing is what I know is that your career doesn't matter so much as long as you're proud of it and how you get somebody to understand it. And, in our Western culture, it's a big part of our lives. It's huge. It's massive. I mean, I can't really. This was funny. I was hanging out with a friend the other day. Man, when I talk about my business, I can talk forever. When I talk about like stuff that, like who's winning the baseball stuff, like, dude, I'm clueless and totally unmotivated. So, hey, career is pretty like important and a big deal for myself. Um, Purpose, massive. I think it's so interesting because we, whenever I advertise a course on purpose with men, they go ape shit for it, ape shit. So there's so much of a calling for that. But every single person in our world today is looking for that definition. And I really think it's just because we have so much overload that people are a little bit lost with it. But everybody wants to talk about it, every woman. And there's so much you could talk about purpose because it goes all over the place. It could be like your function, it could be your desire, it could be have to do with your ambition, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, the meaning that we have in things needs to be defined so much in our culture. And I really think because there's a lack of identity and all that sort of stuff. But geez, it's a big, big deal. All right, family is the next thing. So everybody has a family. Everybody can talk about it, influence them in massive ways. Sex obviously is there, and everybody in this world wants to talk about it, whether they disagree with it, agree with it, want to know more about it, they're curious about it. The fact that I say I have a company that is based on sex, people people go crazy talking to me about it. They're immediately interested, and it's awesome. In fact, it was funny because I was talking to somebody in Hawaii, and he was an older guy, he's in his 70s, and he goes, "I imagine the people you get are really weird and awkward." I was like, "Yeah, there's definitely that, but to be honest, it's actually this guy was an attorney all his life." And I said, "Man, I've had federal judges and senators who've been my clients. I mean, I've had Academy Award winners and so on, and I've had weird people too, and I've had just normal people as well." So he like could not believe that I could have some of the people that I had as clients, and I was like, "Look, man, if you wanted to know more about connection with people on a sexual level, would you know how to have that? You know, even with your wife, would you know what that's like now and how that transitions in your life? And you had if you had access to get to know her better in a way where she could feel this way and da 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 da." And it was like very easy to get it to bring it back around to him not seeing this job as an odd job, but as a job that is totally in deficit in our culture. So kind of interesting. Anyway, ambition is the next thing. Everybody has an ambition, and ambition and purpose are kind of like two different things, even though a lot of people tie them in together, including myself. I could tie them in together, but ambition in its simplest form is the pursuit to do better. You know, it's a big thing. We just got done with TSL Life's Ambition series, where we're going into that. How do you pursue your life better? What do you do? If we were to break down, the ambition is the what, the purpose is the why. The purpose is the function of it, then the meaning behind it. And I could get all into the philosophy of purpose because, once again, at TSL Life, we've explored it pretty awesomely. Now, that being said, okay, so what do we got? We have 9 categories here of exploring ourselves on a deep level. This is just a starting place. This isn't the absolute of you. You know, this is a way where we're actually looking at the ecology of you. What makes up that sort of sense of who you are? And how can we connect it? How can we change it? How can we interact with it? And now I want you to also think about this, just to step back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier, is when we look at um, like the social dynamic, we meet people, we make friends with them, we build rapport, we go on dates, those sorts of things. We're actually going to project a lot of this. We're using this like, oh, my career, my purpose, my self perception to connect with somebody. All right. And we're also using it to elicit them. All right. So it's like, man, well, my purpose is this. What's your purpose? That's not what I meant by purpose. How is it deeper? How is it this? How is it that? Oh, that seems like, you know, your ambition is moving to that. Oh, how interesting. You know, we're starting to build this interaction with one another. The interesting thing is like I said, that's going to stop with that social realm when it moves into a couple places, heavy intimacy or sex or both, because they both go hand in hand. They start to change. Not to say that these are irrelevant, they've just all changed. Okay. So when I start having sex with somebody, when I start dating somebody, when I start caring for somebody, when somebody really, really starts to have that bond that we have with each other, things change in the sense that my self perception now is massively influenced by them, and it also influences them as well. So they influence me, I influence them. Same with social perception, same with attraction. We have we're our own entity now. It's not divided between me and her or whatever the dynamic is. It is now her and I are closer to maybe not its own singular unit, but our attraction is our attraction. It's not my attraction and her attraction. My view of my career might be a little bit less influenced by her, but it's there. And I'm not talking about like a crazy unified relationship. I'm talking about like we're fucking somebody on the regular type thing. It starts to change. Okay. So it's important to recognize that those things switch. And because they switch, the dynamics switch. All right. So the way you talk to somebody when you don't know them to get certain results within social dynamics is one thing. The way you're going to talk to somebody to get certain results when you're more intimate with them, whether you're close friends in a relationship and so on, is going to be another. All right. Of course, there'll be bridges and there'll be similarities, but they are very, very different. So, what we wanted to talk about today was how can we get into communication, into simple communication, using some of these things. And on the call, when we open up the lines for the Q&A portion, which is not recorded, that's what I'd like to go through. I'd like to go through, the specifics of some of these different things that we've gone over in the identity workbook, and how can we get them into some sort of functional communication? How can we get a result from them? A result that we'll understand, we'll feel good about, we'll be able to get it as a point of reference, and then be able to move on to a more broad social dynamic that influences us in deeper ways. So, um, that being said, really quickly, let's look at this. All right. One of the things that I like most on this whole list is this attraction thing. So, what we got into it for, we're all attracted to women. I'm attracted to a lot of things. I'm attracted to a lot. Jesus, man. I was actually talking about this with the Jesus Tiger because at some point we are going to start our porn experiment. But I've already been training in the dark arts of pornography. So I'll watch like 2 hours a day or something of porn. And I was telling him, because he doesn't watch porn, he's like, no, don't watch it. And he actually does really well. He gets laid all the time. That's another thing that we talked about. But I was like, the interesting thing about porn, for me, especially because I've been in a relationship for so long and my sexual diversity has not been fulfilled, it has made me realize how much I love women and their bodies and that fucking straight up sexual side of it. The part that everybody gets pissed off about, like, you're objectifying. It's like, Jesus Christ, man, dude, I love tits. I love pussies. Like, every pussy is fucking different. It's amazing. I love how people fuck, the different ways. Like, it's all so different. It's such a great, that's the most amazing thing about sex is like, everybody's sex is so different. Every single woman, a woman can have a very similar body to another woman, but she fucks totally different. It's just nuts. Her mind, everything is different. But because that's such a bad thing to talk about, we're not supposed to know about it. So we walk into these relationships totally unprepared to know what's coming next, man. And then we fall in love or we get our emotions all change and whatever, and we don't even know what the fuck's going on. And then we realize we're not sunk up and we're just fucked. And we break up with somebody, but we can't break up. So we got to lie and act dishonest and whatever. It's just this big, giant, super long cycle of fucked upness. That's such a long way around that cycle that we don't even recognize we're doing the same pattern over and over again. So what I realized, all of that I got from watching porn. No, but the thing is that in attraction, it's such a great exploration, right? So I like women on that level. I like women on a purely sexual object level. Okay, that is definitely a part of my attraction. I also like women on this emotional level massively. In fact, I I know what I like. Of course, I'm open to that being different. But man, I like a lot of nurturing, a lot of caring. I really, really, that's a big part of it. That's like with my friends, with women I'd have relationships with. That's just a big thing. All right. How much do you care? What's your concern? Um, the personality that can go along with that and all that sort of stuff. And of course, I get it. I can like all those things, but usually what ends up happening if I build a relationship with somebody, those things change, you know. I've become massively emotionally attracted to women who aren't like that. And you know, attraction is just kind of a cool thing in that way. And then also there's like a mental capacity. How much do I like to share my time and all that sort of stuff with them? It just is a very, very cool deal. So attraction has all this sort of stuff within it. All right. Now, when I explore that, I realize there's so many things I don't know. There's so many things I think I like, but then I like something else. The more I experience life, the more I realize I can pinpoint stuff and say tits, ass, personality, emotion. This is what I want. I'm going to go for it. And then it ends up and turns up to be something else. Now, the cool thing I also know about interacting and talking with women is that they have similar things. A woman has a carnal side of her too. You know, I've never been with a woman that I've gotten, I've had sex with that doesn't love dick because she'll tell me how much she loves dick when I'm fucking her, or when she's in that sexual state of mind, or whatever it is, right? She will absolutely reveal that to me. So women have this objectifying side of them too, of where they want to see things and yada yada yada. And they also have this emotional side, and they also have this mental side, and it all fits in the same mix. And just like me, they also think they know what they want, but in reality of what happens, it's this constant journey to try and discover it. And every time they get knee deep in what it is they want and who they are and all that sort of good stuff, man, they kind of can confuse themselves with it because something else happens. All right. So when I look at all those things about attraction, when I really examine it with myself, how can we come up with an opener from that? How can we come up with some baseline social dynamics to, you know, make it more personal to us, to generate what it is we want using who we are and all that sort of stuff? And how can we move it into rapport, storytelling, friendship, enough to get all the function to get a date so that we could start interacting with people? Okay. So step number one is in TSL is that we want to make things normal. Well, step number one is actually identity workbook. But then the application is that we want to make socializing as normal as possible. All right. So how is it that I can make it as normal as possible? Take out all the anxiety, all the social pressure, because if I'm born to be social, I shouldn't need to pump my comfort zone or state in order to, you know, have a conversation with somebody or think that I'm social. But how can I take looking at women's breasts, her legs, her ass, or whatever, how can I take that and make it as normal as possible and feel good and comfortable about it? You know, so how can I do that in a world where that is just like not acceptable? You know, if I'm just staring at a girl's tits and not doing anything else, I'm gonna piss a lot of people off. I'm gonna get in some like serious trouble, man. You know, the shit is going to go down. So how can I do that? Well, one of the things is, and this is where like men get massively intimidated by this. Like, man, how can I say hello to a girl that I'm physically and sexually attracted to? How can I not be a creeper? Like, how can I? This is one of those things. It's like you end up following her. You're kind of like walking around her, shadowing her, like figuring out the right time to do it. When she looks over at you, because she kind of notices you, you look away really quick. Like, you don't want to be that guy, right? So, how can I do that? You know, without building all that anxiety and all that pressure? Well, look, there's no simple answer to it, but we have to learn in those moments to use basic communication skills while also enjoying the things that we enjoy as men. All right. So when I actually, this is a true story. It's like awesomely true story. So there was, I was walking around the store the other day. I was at Home Depot and I just had to make like a quick run there. And I was right about to close, and I see this like awesome ass, like it just this awesome ass on this chick. that had like a she had a certain way of standing where it was just like I don't give a fuck. And it was like I've seen her from behind, but it was like this pouty, entitled fucking chick standing with an awesome ass. And I'm like, I want to see and that's always the big trick for a guy. You're like awesome ass or awesome tits, and then you look at the rest of it, and you're like, ah. So anyway, it's just like a split second. I'm like, that's an awesome ass. I'm gonna pay more attention to that. So I turn my head and I look, and I'm like, hey man, she is hot. The rest of her. And then I realized, holy shit, she has a prosthetic leg. Like this girl was missing a leg. It was fucking crazy, right? And it didn't make she actually didn't walk too funny from it. It was like from the knee down. And it was just wasn't like imbalanced and it was like fucking amazing. I was just like, oh my God, Jesus Christ. That is fucking awesome. And you couldn't not look at that, right? Because it's hot, and then you're like, wait a minute, whoa, she has a fake leg and it's still hot. Yeah, it's still, and then the rest of her's hot. Cool. And then the coolest part was she had a slipper on the fake leg that matched her slipper. I was like, man, there's a lot of work into it. Anyway, funny enough, I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna go get my stuff and do my thing. But you totally noticed it. Well, we end up in line right next to each other, and there's a couple options I have there. First off, ass is really good. Wasn't wearing anything too revealing, but the ass and the tits went well, and her face was it was just there was a lot of good stuff going on. But then on top of that, she also has a prosthetic limb. If I sit there staring at her, okay, it's going to completely ruin the moment. And also, I had an easy thing because we ended up in line together. Now, I didn't really care either way. You know, I didn't need to chase her down or whatever. And I suppose you could do those things. But my motto is I always want to wait for the easiest possible time where opportunity presents itself rather than going out of my way for it. And why is that? It has nothing to do with being alpha or dominance or like snap into a Slim Jim. I'm this awesome man. It more or less has to do with if I'm chasing too much, if I'm chasing to chase, I'm missing the point. Chasing is awesome because that's what men do. That's what human beings do. Like it's a good thing. The pursuit is great. But if I'm just doing it to do it, it's stupid. I have to do it because I'm inspired to do it. All right. But definitely wasn't like, man, I don't really care that much. End up in line. All I do is I say, hey, how's it going? What are you here for? Bulbs, plugs, blah, 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 blah. Just whatever small talk conversation. And then all I did was I switched it to like, hey, look, this is a totally weird question, but you probably get it all the time. And I have some friends who got handicapped and all that sort of stuff in the war. But man, you fit that prosthetic so fucking well. Like that is it's just it's awesome. Like I had to double take, it was like one of the coolest things. Anyway, what's your name? I don't mean to be rude by asking that or whatever, blah 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 blah. Opens up, talks to me, makes small talk easier. Nothing really goes on. I pay for my shit. I leave, fucking put my shit in my truck in the parking lot. She waves to me as I'm leaving. No big deal. No relationship beyond that. But at the same time, I have to be able to speak and talk and interact with what's in front of me without pressure. Okay. Now, there's all sorts of different ways to open, there's all sorts of different ways to talk about it. But man, if I see something that is hot and it's in front of me, man, I make the decision to talk to it or not. In fact, I made a video on this because there's a whole bunch of guys who, well, not a whole bunch of guys, but this question comes up a lot. But I got 2 emails about this in one day, and I have not put up the video or I haven't made it public. I don't think I have. It's on my YouTube. I probably should, but the blog post to it won't go up for like I don't know, a couple weeks at this rate. Um, but it's already written. The thing is that these guys were saying, when I see a hot chick and I don't talk to her, I feel like less of a man. Or when I see a hot woman and I talk to her and it doesn't really go all that well, I feel horrible and rejected. And, da, da, da. And it's like, man, this is just a shitty thing, shitty way to feel. you have to realize that number one, you don't need to approach everything. And actually, what I actually say in the video is like, think of what a sexually healthy man does. Like what a sexually healthy man does, and I'm not talking about a pickup guy because that's like a guy who's trying to fit the image of a sexually healthy man. But a sexually healthy man goes like, oh, it's a hot chick. Maybe I'll talk to her. Oh, she passed me by. Okay, you know, it it's going to happen again. And the weird catch 22 about a sexually healthy man is what makes him sexually healthy is he's probably been having sex. A guy who's been having sex doesn't freak out about a woman that he's losing an opportunity to. And a guy also who's been having sex also notices every fucking hot woman. That actually brings up another thing because a guy emailed me about masturbation. Because these dudes, the Euro Tour guys, they've been posting all these videos on not only like how porn is ruining your life, but how masturbation is ruining your life. And I was like, man, I really like you guys, but you know, I actually think opposite of you guys because like masturbation happens as a totally normal thing for men, and it seems like I get people get really into no fap and whatever it is, but um, like I don't like to hate on it or to judge it adds to the problem, to the existing shame of it. And I can tell that from myself and other people with certain mentalities around it that we masturbate and have like really functioning sex lives. And I would think the majority of men masturbate and don't have any problems affecting their sex lives because of it. And then we got into the discussion more, and I just said, look, let me just put it straight to you guys. And this may not be true for you, but it seems to be true with everybody I know, everybody else I know who does this. I know no sexually healthy men that force themselves to restrict masturbation. I know men trying to achieve sexual health that are restricting their masturbation, but I don't know people who are sexually healthy that do that. I know people that are sexually healthy that masturbate. I know people that are sexually fucked up that masturbate. But the key thing is that the masturbation goes for a win. And the fact of the matter is there's a ton of guys who fucking jerk off who don't have a problem with anything. So whatever. There's a ton of guys who watch porn and jerk off who don't have a problem with anything. But the reason why I bring that up is again, like you got to look at what the sexually healthy man does. You got to look at what the sane man does, and not the man who's trying to get sane, who's been fucked up and won't admit to you how fucked up he is. That being said, we treat our attraction like that, and it's just a bummer. Well, what happens when we want to start a conversation with that? Okay, and it's super super simple. All right. First off, like opening can be an opinion opener, it can be a direct opener, it can be a situational opener. But if we want to sit around the realm of attraction and what we think, man, there's so much to it. Like, think about this. Now, if we have to take a couple steps back in what we were talking about when we first started this, but what do I think is attractive? I think physicality is attractive. I think emotion's attractive. And I think mentality is attractive. There's a question right there. So if I wanted to do an opinion opener, cold approach somebody, I could say, hey, this is a random question, but I want an answer from a stranger. What do you think is the most attractive thing about somebody you date? Would it be their personality? Would it be the emotional fulfillment you get? Or would it be their physicality? And does one of those make you like have a more poor type of relationship? Okay, so that maybe she'll be able to answer, but most likely it'll be harder to answer, which is good because then you can explain yourself. And you can say, well, look, a lot of people say guys or girls who have poor relationships, and we'll just say guys who have poor relationships, often have that because they go for the physical side of attraction first rather than the emotional side or the mental side. Like, do you think it's important where you start? Because it all kind of matters, right? Like your best relationship, did it start with you being attracted to how they thought, what you guys did, or, were all these things separate or were they together? And this is something that she can answer. Okay. So we could talk about that. Now, if you go along in kind of what we call the anatomy of attraction here at TSL, we then say, well, look, in baseline superficial conversations, in order to get enough to get rapport, we're going to focus on four things. We're going to focus on how do we open, okay? So you do opinion, direct, situational. And then we look at our teases, okay? So it's just kind of like a joke between you guys. Maybe it can be even a knock on them, whatever, but the tease and neg type thing. And then we look at bait, all right, which is again another push pull device, much like teasing. And then we look at small talk, like mini stories, little topic based stories. So I actually, if I opened with attraction, I may not stay there on the thread, but let's just say for teaching's sake, we actually stay there and we might need some of this social lubricant of teasing, bait, or small talk after we opened. So we say, like, the whole opener of like, what do you think is the most attractive quality? Is it the physicality? Is it the mentality, the emotion? What in a really good relationship added that to you? Do you think there's a problem if people go physical first? And then we could say, like, well, wait a minute. Let's do a tease that has to do with attraction. And say, well, wait a minute. You're not one of those people that like gets all uptight about, when you talk about human things like sex and relationships or whatever. So you could do a little push pull thing like that, or you could even do another one that's a little bit more playful and just say like, oh, sorry, I guess I should only ask you the PG-13 questions, and whatever that you can put into it to be able to move closer to that idea of attraction. All these are simple push pull devices. They really don't, you know, they don't do much. The whole point of them is to get you into rapport, right? That's the main deal. So anyway, or if we wanted to add some bait, we could do something like, you know what? I was gonna say this, but you probably have like, I don't know, you might be too judgmental about a topic like this. No, 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 no. Tell me. No, I'm not judgmental at all. Again, very similar to a tease, push pull device, to get a reaction stimulated. It's like, well, wait a minute. How old are you again? Ah, I can't tell you this. No, 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 no. I want to know. It's going to build that sort of thing back. And then there could be small talk, fun mini stories that have to do with attraction, right? It could be like, okay, wait a minute. I'm telling the wrong story here. Sorry about that. Just a little push pull to lead it. And then we could say, like, no, no, no. Like, sometimes for me, I have like a big thing with like novelty attraction stuff, but it could also be like, the ones that have deep meaning have a mix of that novelty and this like, personal sense of mine. It's just a weird, weird thing. Like, for instance, I was dating this girl that was 19 years old when I was like 33 or something, 34. And it was like such a weird thing because it had been a while since I dated somebody with that much of an age gap with myself, and it was just cool. Then all of a sudden, next week, I met a girl that was 6 foot tall, and I was like, man, who should I date? The 19-year-old or the 6 foot tall person? It was just two of these kind of like weird things, but eventually, the 6 foot tall person ended up staying with me, and I'm still with her to this day. And it was like that novelty that started it all. That's an interesting, fun story that can engage people, that has enough points in it to keep them interested. One of the problems is that we repress self-expression and what reality is to go for what works, to kind of pinpoint on what we were doing earlier, or talking about earlier, is that, look, you want a story that works, no doubt. You want a story that engages. You want a story that is interesting to them, but you don't necessarily want to. You already have those stories. You know, it could be super super easy. You could make an attraction story about uh, how you got your last dog, whatever it might be. You know, you'd be, no man, it's interesting because like the things that are closest in my life, you know, when I think about how those things came into my life, there wasn't necessarily this way that men and women look at attraction. Like for instance, you know, one of my dogs, well, my both of my dogs are like some of the closest things in my life, but how they came in was, you know, one I picked, you know, I found him and I picked him and all that sort of stuff. And he, you know, he was there, but in a way that I couldn't have checklist off that it was a good thing, but it was absolute that he was going to be my dog. But when I came to the conclusion that I was going to get another dog, he wasn't any of, well, he was some of the things that I wanted, but it wasn't really what I expected. So we have all this idea that we can predict stuff, but the things that are really important just kind of happen. So that could be a story on a concept of attraction that I like. You don't need to go too much outside of yourself. And so that's one of the problems with the idea of the DHV, and that you need to put in all these attraction switches or build social value or look really cool in your story. You could talk about things which are bad. Like I could say that, man, I have a lot of experience with women, but it's all failure. I could make that into attraction. You know, there's so many different ways that I could do it. But we could pinpoint all sorts of different parts of ourselves, turn them into social dynamics to connect with other people. And if we want a starting place with that, it's like, how can we open and talk about these things? How can we bait and talk about these things? How can we tease? And how can we build small stories that will eventually have the result of gaining rapport? So, what I want to do now is actually go through with you guys of what of any of these things: your self perception, social perception, attraction, wants, desires, career, purpose, life, family, sex life. Um, I said purpose life, but it just says purpose. And ambition can be used to build social dynamics so that you can meet people and put them into application and get a quick result with it. All right, I'm going to put it on pause and we'll start it up again. Okay, so we are back recording, and it's been actually a little bit because we've been talking about this. Whereas one of the guys in the call said, first it was like, is there a specific order I should bring up things about myself that might be better or worse? And he said, and so we asked him what he said, and he said, well, I'm weird. And he's like, if I bring that up too soon, you know, people give me a funky look. You know, it doesn't really work out so well. So here's like one of those things that you should really you should really think about it. Okay, so like first off, you can bring up anything that you want. You can, and there's strategic times where stuff is better than others, and you know it's like you don't want to challenge that too much. But hey, if you think you're feeling weird, let's figure out how we can talk about it. Now, what gets in the way of expression? What's going to get in the way of your expression with talking to a girl that you're attracted to? There's your nerves. Okay, so that's a big deal. What's going to get rid of the nerves is that if we can comfortably get into a fluid mode of conversation. Okay, so when we loosen up, all that sort of stuff, and we hear this all the time from guys who have had a lot of, well, even like just some relationships with women. Whenever they come to a dating coach, they're like, I'm fine once I get the conversation going, but how do I get the conversation going? I need to learn how to approach and blah 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 blah. Okay, but really what that tells you, and this is true for everybody, is that we're all fine once we get into a conversation where we feel like we're representing ourselves. Now, we could still feel nervous again, but that initial nerve, which is keeping you from talking, it's that will be killed by you just having a normal conversation. So that's why we don't want to get all abnormal and fucking, you know, do all this crazy shit to make the conversation happen, because it'll make us more abnormal. We want to be as normal as possible. All right. The second thing is what's going to get us in the way of having that conversation is, we could say not knowing what to say, being unprepared, all that sort of stuff, right? And so we want to kind of know the direction of where we're going to go, which actually was brought up on the call. So you got to know where you want to go. All right. So I'm weird. All right. Cool. Have them understand it. One of the main principles that we work off of at TSL is like if people understand you, they're not going to judge you. So it's like, okay, how can they understand you better? How can they make sense out of that a little bit more? All right. So you got to look at what it means to be weird, possibly how other people may see it, the generality of it, and so on. But those things are, are really kind of like a badass deal to it all. So it's like, hey, I'm weird, but you also got to realize everybody is weird in a certain way and you have to articulate it. The only reason why people are going to walk away from you is not because they're mean spirited asshole fucks, not because you're a dysfunctional, abnormal human being. It's because they won't be able to talk to you, right? They can't understand it. If they can talk to you, they will talk to you. They literally might not be able to talk to you and so on, yada, yada, yada. Another thing that was given up as a point of resistance of why this wouldn't work is what happens when they reject you. Okay. And really think about this. Nobody wants to go into a conversation where they don't know what to say, they're unprepared, they are afraid, they don't know how to articulate themselves, and then like the possibility of them getting rejected. Man, it's a lot easier to just sit there, drink your fucking drink, and shut the fuck up. It's like people don't necessarily want that. But the thing is that I would say you need to be able to articulate like who you are. If they don't understand you, they reject you, they even talk shit back, they give you passive resistance of just not paying attention or aggressive resistance of saying what the fuck is wrong with you. You need to be prepared to be able to explain yourself. And that's really the only offer you're giving. So if you're talking to somebody and whatever, and one of the first things you say is like, "Hey, look, I'm weird," and they're like, "Okay," well, then it's like, "No, no, no. Look, we're all weird to some degree, but I mean, look, I have trouble talking to people, communicating, and all those sorts of things. So let me ask you, what does it mean to make good friends with people? And legitimately challenge them and ask them something that like you're wondering about. So, man, I mean, like serious shit. If I don't know how to do something, like you should read this, by the way, for who this is to, is my friend Joao wrote this, put this article up on Charles Bukowski and the different things of like writers, and it's like, so you want to be a writer or something like that. And I actually agree a lot with this, and I think there's not enough of this. There's like too much of this, like what works, art form shit, and how to be successful, and yada yada yada. And kind of some of the points that he makes in this article is right up your alley, because it's like you're gonna fail, you're gonna go into this like problem with yourself, you're going to explore all this crap, you're gonna hate yourself, you're gonna be confused out of your mind, and fucking yada yada yada. People will say like, what's one of the most dangerous jobs? Like perhaps the pursuit of being an artist would be the most dangerous and dysfunctional job, like because so many people have problems with it. But I kind of respected what he wrote in this. This is something that people do not understand. And actually, before I started pickup, I would try and explain like my ideas on art or whatever to people, and they would be like repulsed by it because I would get so insane with it, man. And I believed in it so much, it would be like, no, you do not understand. Like this is why, like, so when I did theater, this is how fucking crazy I was. Like I did light designs for a shit ton of people, but like Julie Taymor, this guy Dan Fields. Julie Taymor created The Lion King on Broadway and did the movie Frida and all this sort of stuff. And Dan was He's a Broadway director. He's like super legit guy. This guy Jim McClure. I even rewrote a play with Jim McClure. Every time I did any of those things, this is how like crazy artist I was when I was like 23 and 22 and stuff. I was actually working at a pretty high level then. That's kind of cool. But when I was doing that, I would use a fake name. I would never use my name. And one of the reasons for that was because I was like, man, I didn't create this. I just did the work. Like I got this interpretation. I would go nuts talking about this. It was actually cool when I read The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield because he talks about this. But it wasn't me. Like it was obviously something out there. So I'd be explaining this to people. I'd be like, no, man, it is the word of God and you can't, fucking replicate that and da da da. I'd go into all this like Muslim and Jewish theory of fucking art and yada yada, and you can't be an artist. Yeah, I got to be an artisan. I'd go nuts, man. Nobody would fucking want to listen. Nobody, because I was so like emphatic about it, and it was pretty much weird. Anyway, so I remember when I took like my first pickup course, they're like, "Don't be negative." Like, stay away from politics and religion or whatever, but you could actually talk about that stuff if you're not angry and judgmental around it. And there's probably some other things to that too. Like you specifically, it might not just be anger and judgment, but that was definitely a big thing with me. It still is, but it was more like I think with you it would be like that it's a bad thing. Like have some fucking pride in it. Like shit, I'm weird. I hate that part of it, but I also like that other part of it. You know, and we have to walk into it being prepared to talk about it. So, sorry, I got kind of caught off on a tangent. I talk about all that shit about art and interpreting it and all that sort of stuff fucking forever. And I can talk to many people about it and I don't get blown out by it. Why? Because I know when people don't understand it, I know how to explain it. I know that if I get rejected by it, it doesn't mean I have to stop. It just means I need to explain it more. You know, I know if I'm getting an indifferent response of a way that I can engage them by it. And so, man, I would sit down and write that shit. I'm weird, and you think that, and you've said that to people, and they're not responsive to it, or you fucking feel it and you want to learn how to talk to people about it. All right. How are you weird? Okay, I don't have any friends and I don't know how to talk to people. That's the answer you gave. But it could be like, well, look, I just have a different mentality and a lot of people don't get along with it. Okay. How can we add one thing to that to make it so that they might understand it more? And even if we got a little bit fancy, could engage them with it. So we'd say, well, look, I think different. I don't make friends really easily, but like, I want to know, like, what does the value of friendship mean to you? And in a way where you're really asking them that, you're not like judging them on it. You're really asking them that. And so they say, well, they're my friend. It's da 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 da, blah, 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 blah. Now you are leading this conversation in a way that you already know. Okay. You already know that what you want out of this. You want to know their true meaning of friendship. And they just kind of gave you a half assed answer of like, well, my friends are this and that. And that's like a big question. That's crazy. And it's like, well, wait a minute. You came out tonight and you wanted to have a good time. I wanted to have a good time. Everybody in this place wanted to have a good time. But really, you wanted to spend it with good people and hang out. And like, where does that come from? You know? And at that point, she may try and explain. She may she may try and explain. She may like be able to, you know, discuss it with you, whatever, but it probably won't be at a deep level. So then all you do is explain yourself more. Okay, because you know where it's going. And if you notice, this is all just question ground, question ground, question ground. You just have to be a little bit more creative with it. But if this is your story, you should know how to write it. And you could say something along the lines of like, well, look, when I came out tonight, I didn't know what I want. And a lot of times I could be really pissed off or in a bad mood or whatever. But one thing that I believe in, okay, one thing that I believe in is I know I wanna talk to people. I want to connect with them because it feels good. And I also believe that human beings are potential for a lot of things. Like I believe in art. I believe in what Alan Watts says. I believe in drinking and sitting here and feeling bad and feeling good and all this sort of stuff. But I know there's more to life. Like I know that there's more to it than what I see. And any opportunity of me seeing more or whatever, or any of that stuff that I'm looking for, I want to take. But a lot of times it doesn't happen. So maybe the question to ask you is what is the more to life for you? What is the big meaning? And man, especially you and your mentality and your like artist vibe and fucking general pissed offness and all this sort of shit is like, man, I would express that to people because it's just so fucking important and it'll make you feel better. The only things getting in the way of you is not knowing what to do, not knowing what to say, not thinking that you can connect that. And when you get rejected or get some resistance or people not knowing, you just don't know how to explain yourself better. And like I said, if people do reject you, the only option you're offering them back is this: hey, I'm going to explain myself so you understand it. And if they fucking can't, then you're rejected. You're rejected for being you. And man, that can feel really bad, but essentially that's a fucking compliment. That's awesome. That's a person that isn't qualified to talk to you. Anyway, hopefully that answer helped, but that's kind of the direction that we've gone so far. So we will cease the recording and get back into fielding more questions.